Emily thought she was safe. She thought the people around her were friends. She believed that being open, honest, and real would make her more likable, more trustworthy, more human. She was wrong. One conversation at a time, she gave away pieces of herself. Small moments, casual remarks, innocent updates about her life. And slowly, without her knowing, those pieces were gathered, remembered, stored, until the day they were used against her. This is the story of a woman who learned the hardest lesson of her career, not through a mistake at work, not through a failed project or a bad review, but through trust. And what happened to her could happen to anyone. Before we delve into the video fully, please comment on the country you're watching from, as this would help us bring you more relatable and insightful videos every day. Let's proceed. Her name was Emily. She was 31 years old, energetic, hardworking, the kind of person who always smiled in meetings, who remembered people's birthdays, who asked how your weekend went and actually listened. She worked at a mid-sized marketing firm in the city. The office was modern, open floor plan, glass walls, beanbag chairs in the break room. It looked like the kind of place where people loved their jobs. And for a while, Emily did. She had been with the company for 3 years, long enough to feel settled, short enough to still care about impressing people. She was good at her job, creative, quick. Her campaigns performed well. Her manager praised her often. But Emily had one quality that many people admired and few people warned her about. She was open. She didn't believe in walls. She didn't believe in keeping people at a distance. She thought vulnerability was strength. She thought sharing made you real. And in a world that constantly talks about authenticity, about being your true self at work, about building genuine connections, Emily felt like she was doing everything right. She shared stories over coffee. She talked about her struggles during team lunches. She opened up in Slack channels and after-work drinks. She thought she was building relationships. What she was actually doing was handing people ammunition. It started small, so small she didn't notice. A comment here, a confession there, little pieces of her personal life, her insecurities, her plans, her frustrations, and one by one, those pieces came back to haunt her. This is the story of the 14 things Emily shared at work. Things she thought were harmless, things she believed would make her more relatable, more liked, more trusted, things that made her a target. It happened during a team lunch. They were sitting outside at a small bistro near the office, 5 of them from the marketing team. The sun was out. The mood was light. Someone had made a joke about how expensive everything was getting, and the conversation drifted toward money. Emily didn't think twice. She mentioned that she had asked for a raise during her last review. She said she felt like she deserved it. She had been working late, taking on extra projects. Her campaigns were outperforming. She even mentioned the number. 68,000. That's what she was making, and she had asked for 75. Her manager had said maybe that they'd revisit it in 6 months. Emily laughed it off, said she wasn't holding her breath, but she hoped it would come through because rent was killing her. The others nodded, sympathized. Someone said they were in the same boat. It felt like solidarity. What Emily didn't realize was that one person at that table, a woman named Jessica, had been with the company for 5 years and was making 72,000. Jessica didn't say anything. She smiled, she nodded. She sipped her iced tea. But inside, something shifted. Jessica had assumed Emily was making less than her, significantly less. After all, Emily had been there for 3 years. Jessica had been there for 5. Jessica had more experience, more responsibility, or so she thought. Now Jessica knew that Emily was asking for 75, just 3,000 less than what Jessica made. And if Emily got that raise, she'd be nearly equal, maybe even more, depending on what Jessica's next review brings. Jessica didn't confront Emily. She didn't bring it up. She just started watching. Over the next few weeks, Jessica began to notice things, small things. Times when Emily left a little early, times when Emily took a long lunch, times when Emily's work wasn't perfect. Jessica started mentioning these things to their manager, casually, in passing. I noticed Emily had to redo that campaign brief. Just wanted to flag it in case it affects the timeline. Emily left at 4:30 yesterday. I wasn't sure if she cleared it with you. I know Emily's been busy, but I think we need to make sure quality doesn't slip. It was never aggressive, never obvious, but it was consistent. And slowly, their manager started to see Emily differently. Not as the rising star, but as someone who might be coasting, someone who might not be ready for more responsibility or more money. When Emily's 6-month check-in came, her manager told her the raise wasn't going to happen. Budget constraints, performance concerns, nothing major, just not the right time. Emily was crushed. She never connected it to that lunch, to that one offhand comment about her salary. But Jessica remembered. And Jessica had won. Salary is private for a reason. The moment you share what you make or what you want to make, you create comparison. And comparison creates resentment, even among people who seem like friends, even among people who smile and nod. You never know who feels threatened by your ambition. You never know who will use your honesty as a reason to undermine you. Keep your numbers to yourself, always. Emily had imposter syndrome. She knew it. She talked about it. She thought talking about it made her brave. One afternoon, she was in a one-on-one meeting with her manager, David. They were reviewing her recent campaign performance. It had gone well. David was complimentary. He said the client loved it. Emily smiled, thanked him, and then, without thinking, she said it. Honestly, I'm just relieved. I wasn't sure I could pull it off. I felt kind of out of my depth with this one. She laughed, tried to play it off as humility. David nodded, said something vague and encouraging. But he heard her. He heard that she doubted herself, that she had felt out of her depth, that even when she succeeded, she wasn't confident. And that changed how he saw her. Before that moment, David had been considering Emily for a lead role on a new high-stakes project, a project with a difficult client, a project that required confidence, quick decisions, the ability to handle pressure, but now he wasn't sure. If Emily doubted herself on a campaign that went well, how would she handle a campaign that hit obstacles? How would she lead a team if she wasn't even sure of her own abilities? David didn't say any of this to Emily. He just quietly moved her name down the list. The lead role went to someone else, someone who had less experience but projected more confidence. Emily found out through the grapevine. She was disappointed, confused. She thought she had proven herself. What she didn't realize was that she had also revealed herself. She had shown David her inner doubt, and in a workplace that rewards certainty, doubt is a disqualifier. Never confess uncertainty to people who have power over your career, even if you feel it, even if it's real. Imposter syndrome is a private battle. The people who decide your future don't need to know you struggle with it. They need to see competence, calm, control. Save your vulnerability for therapy or trusted friends outside of work. At work, let your results speak, not your doubts. There was a guy on Emily's team named Mark. Mark was lazy. Everyone knew it. He missed deadlines. He half-assed his work. He disappeared during crunch time and reappeared when things were done, ready to take credit. Emily hated working with him. And one day she said so. It was after hours. A few people from the team had stayed late to finish a pitch. Mark had left at 5 as usual, claiming he had a doctor's appointment. Emily and 2 others, Sarah and Jason, were still at their desks, stressed and exhausted. Sarah made a joke about Mark, something about how convenient his appointments always were. Emily laughed, and then she went further. Honestly, I don't know how he still has a job here. He contributes nothing. I've covered for him so many times, and he never even says thank you. I'm so tired of it. Sarah and Jason agreed. They vented for a few more minutes. It felt good, cathartic. What Emily didn't know was that Sarah and Mark were friends outside of work. Not close friends, but friendly enough. They'd gotten drinks a few times. They followed each other on social media. And Sarah, whether out of loyalty or mischief or some mix of both, mentioned Emily's comments to Mark. Not maliciously, just casually. Yeah, we were all venting last night after you left. Emily was pretty frustrated. She said she's been covering for you a lot. Mark didn't react in the moment, but he didn't forget. From that point on, Mark became Emily's problem. He stopped collaborating with her. He questioned her ideas in meetings. He made small, passive-aggressive comments about her work. He began positioning himself as the more reliable one, the more experienced one. And when a conflict arose between them on a project, Mark escalated it to their manager. He framed it as Emily being difficult, unwilling to collaborate, overly critical. David, their manager, had to mediate. And while he didn't take sides publicly, privately, he started to see Emily as someone who created friction, someone who complained about coworkers instead of managing relationships. Emily's reputation took a quiet hit, all because of one venting session, one moment of honesty that she thought was private. Never trash talk a coworker, ever, even if they deserve it, even if everyone agrees. You don't know who's listening. You don't know who's loyal to whom. You don't know who will repeat your words, twist them, or use them later. Offices are small ecosystems. Everyone is connected. If you have a problem with someone, handle it directly or stay silent. Venting feels good in the moment, but it always costs you later. Emily had anxiety. She'd had it for years. She managed it well most of the time. Therapy, medication, exercise. She was functional, successful, but some days were harder than others. One morning she came into the office visibly tired. She'd had a rough night, couldn't sleep, racing thoughts. The usual spiral. Her desk neighbor, a woman named Claire, noticed. "You okay? You look exhausted." Emily hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just had a bad anxiety night. Didn't sleep much." Claire nodded sympathetically, said she understood, that she'd been there. It felt like a moment of connection, but Claire filed it away. Not consciously, not maliciously, but she filed it away. And over the next few months, whenever Emily seemed off, whenever she was quieter than usual, whenever she took a sick day, Claire's mind went back to that conversation. Emily has anxiety. Emily struggles sometimes. Emily might not be as stable as she seems. Claire didn't say this out loud. She didn't gossip. She didn't weaponize it. But when the company was going through a restructuring and there were whispers about layoffs, Claire's manager asked her opinion on the team. Who was essential? Who could handle more responsibility? Claire mentioned that Emily was talented but seemed to struggle with stress, that she'd mentioned anxiety before, that she sometimes seemed overwhelmed. It wasn't meant to be cruel, it was just an observation. But it was enough. When the decision came down, Emily's name was on the list of people to watch. People who might not be able to handle increased pressure, people who might be a risk. Emily wasn't laid off, but she wasn't promoted either, and she never knew that her one honest moment, her one admission of being human, had quietly put a ceiling over her head. Mental health is private. Your struggles are real and they matter. But the workplace is not a safe space for vulnerability. People will use your honesty against you. Not always intentionally, sometimes just by remembering, by associating you with instability, with risk. Protect yourself. Keep your mental health between you and professionals who are trained to help you. At work, be the version of yourself that gets things done, not the version that needs support. Emily cared about the world. She had opinions, strong ones, about politics, social justice, environmental issues, human rights, and she wasn't shy about sharing them. It started small, a comment in the break room about a news story, a shared article in the company Slack, a joke during a meeting about a political figure. Most people nodded along. Some people agreed. It felt safe, but not everyone agreed. There was a senior director named Tom, mid-50s, quiet, reserved, polite in meetings. Tom didn't share his political views at work. He didn't engage in those conversations. He just listened, and he noticed that Emily talked. A lot. Tom didn't dislike Emily, but he didn't respect her approach. He believed work was work, that politics didn't belong in the office, that professionalism meant keeping your opinions to yourself. When a leadership position opened up on Emily's team, Tom was one of the people consulted. He didn't say Emily was unqualified. He said she was polarizing, that she had strong opinions that she expressed openly, that it might create tension on a team that needed cohesion. It was a soft no, and it was enough. The role went to someone else, someone quieter, someone who didn't make waves. Emily found out later. She was confused. She thought she had the experience, the skills, the rapport, She never knew that her openness, her willingness to speak up about things she cared about, had been labeled as a liability. Your values are yours, but your workplace is not your platform. The moment you express strong opinions, you become divisive. Even if you're right, even if you're passionate, even if most people agree, there will always be someone who doesn't, someone who has power, someone who remembers. Keep your beliefs private, show up, do your work, be professional. Save your activism for spaces where it can't cost you your career. Emily was going through a breakup. It was messy, painful, the kind that makes you question everything. She and her boyfriend of 3 years had ended things. He'd moved out. She was living alone for the first time in a long time. Some days she was fine. Other days she wasn't. And at work, people noticed. One afternoon, during a coffee break, a coworker named Lisa asked if she was okay. Emily sighed, and then she opened up. She talked about the breakup, how hard it was, how she was struggling to focus, how she'd been crying in her car during lunch breaks, how she felt like she was barely holding it together. Lisa listened, hugged her, told her it would get better. It felt like support. But Lisa also worked closely with David, Emily's manager. And a few days later, during a casual check-in, Lisa mentioned it, not to gossip, just as context. I think Emily's going through something personal. She mentioned a breakup. She seems pretty affected by it. David thanked Lisa for the heads up, said he'd keep an eye on it, and he did. Over the next few weeks, David started noticing when Emily seemed distracted, when she was less engaged in meetings, when her work was slightly below her usual standard. Before, he would have brushed it off. Everyone has off days, but now he had a narrative. Emily's going through a breakup. She's struggling. She's not focused. When performance review time came, David noted that Emily had been inconsistent during the latter half of the year, that she seemed distracted at times. It wasn't enough to hurt her significantly, but it was enough to keep her stuck. No raise, no promotion, just a let's touch base again next quarter. Emily had no idea that her personal life had bled into her professional reputation, all because she'd been honest, vulnerable, human. Your personal life is not your coworkers' business, even when they ask, even when they seem to care. People can't unhear what you tell them, and once they know you're struggling, they start looking for evidence of it in your work. Keep your heartbreak, your breakups, your relationship drama outside the office. Smile, be vague, say you're fine, and save the real conversation for people who can impact your career. Emily's mother was sick, not terminally, but chronically. Diabetes, high blood pressure, a series of small health issues that required management, doctor's appointments, and medications. Emily was an only child. The responsibility fell on her. She was managing it, barely. Between work and caregiving, she was stretched thin. And one day she mentioned it. It was during a team meeting. Someone had asked if she could take on an extra project. Emily hesitated. I'm already pretty maxed out. My mom's been having some health issues, and I've been helping her with appointments and things. I'm not sure I can take on more right now. Her manager nodded, said they'd figure it out. The rest of the team was sympathetic, but what Emily didn't realize was that she had just put a label on herself. She was now the person with family obligations, the person who couldn't be relied on for extra work, the person who had competing priorities. It wasn't fair, it wasn't right, but it was true. From that point on, whenever a high visibility project came up, whenever there was an opportunity for growth, Emily wasn't considered. Not because she wasn't capable, but because the assumption was that she was already overwhelmed, that she wouldn't have the bandwidth, that it would be unfair to ask her. And so quietly she was passed over, again and again, until she was no longer seen as someone on the rise, just someone who was managing. Emily eventually noticed. She felt stagnant, frustrated. She couldn't understand why opportunities weren't coming her way. She never connected it to that one honest moment, that one time she told the truth about her life. Caregiving is real, family obligations are real, but the moment you make them visible at work, you become a liability. Fairly or not, you are no longer seen as someone who can go the extra mile, someone who can be counted on. Keep your struggles private. Manage your responsibilities quietly. And never ever tell your employer that you're stretched thin, because once they know, they'll stop asking. And that's when you stop growing. Money was tight for Emily. She had student loans, credit card debt, rent that kept going up, a car payment, the usual. She wasn't drowning, but she wasn't comfortable either. And one day, during a lunch with coworkers, the conversation turned to money. Someone mentioned a vacation they were planning. Someone else talked about buying a new car. Emily laughed and said she was jealous, that she was trying to pay down debt, that a vacation wasn't in the budget for a while. It was casual, lighthearted, but people remembered. And a few weeks later, when the company was planning an off-site retreat, a weekend trip to a resort a few hours away, Emily was invited. But the cost was partially out of pocket. Employees were expected to cover some meals and activities. Emily hesitated. She didn't want to spend the money, but she also didn't want to be the only one not to go. She mentioned her hesitation to her manager, tried to frame it carefully, said she was trying to stick to a budget. David assured her it wasn't mandatory, that she shouldn't stress about it, but internally he noted it. Emily can't afford things. Emily is financially struggling, and that became part of how he saw her. Not consciously, but it was there. When raises came up, when bonuses were discussed, there was a quiet bias. Emily needs money. She's struggling. She's not here because she loves the work. She's here because she needs the paycheck. It made her seem less committed, less passionate, more transactional. And over time, it affected how much he invested in her development, how much he advocated for her, how much he saw her as a future leader. Emily had no idea that admitting financial stress had quietly downgraded her status. Never let your employer know you need the money. The moment you do, you lose leverage. You lose the perception of choice. You become someone who can't leave. Someone who will accept less because they have to. Keep your financial situation private, always. Act like you have options, even if you don't. Because the moment they know you're desperate, they stop valuing you. Emily wasn't sure marketing was her forever career. She'd been thinking about it for a while. She liked the work. She was good at it, but she'd always been interested in other things. Writing, nonprofits, maybe going back to school. She wasn't planning to leave anytime soon. It was just a thought, a curiosity, and one day she mentioned it. She was having coffee with a coworker named Jordan. They were talking about life, goals, dreams. Emily said she sometimes wondered what else was out there, that she'd been thinking about exploring other fields, that she wasn't sure marketing was her endgame. Jordan nodded, said he got it, that he'd felt the same way before. It was a good conversation, thoughtful, reflective, but Jordan also repeated it. Not to hurt Emily, just in passing. He mentioned it to another coworker, who mentioned it to someone else, and eventually the whisper reached David. Emily's not sure she wants to be here long term. That changed everything. David didn't confront Emily. He didn't ask her about it. He just stopped investing in her. Why train someone who's already thinking about leaving? Why promote someone who's not fully committed? Why give opportunities to someone who might not stick around? Emily noticed that she was being sidelined, that projects were going to others, that David seemed less interested in her development. She couldn't figure out why. She never knew that one honest conversation, one moment of curiosity, had quietly tanked her future at the company. Never tell your employer you're thinking about leaving, even hypothetically, even as a distant thought. The moment you admit uncertainty, you're done. You become a flight risk, someone not worth investing in, someone who will be replaced, not developed. Even if you stay for years, the shadow of that doubt will follow you. Keep your career exploration private. Let your next move speak for itself, but never ever give your current employer a reason to stop believing in your commitment. Emily had migraines, bad ones, the kind that made it hard to think, hard to work, hard to function. She managed them. She had medication. She knew her triggers, but sometimes they still hit, and when they did, she had to call in sick. At first she was vague, just said she wasn't feeling well. But after the third or fourth time, her manager asked if everything was okay, if there was a pattern. Emily decided to be upfront. She explained that she had chronic migraines, that they were unpredictable, that she was managing them, but sometimes she just needed a rest. David was understanding, told her to take care of herself, but internally he made a note. Emily has a chronic condition. Emily has unpredictable absences, and that affected how he saw her reliability. When a critical project came up, one that required someone who could be there every day, someone who wouldn't miss deadlines, Emily wasn't considered. Not because she'd ever missed a deadline, she hadn't, but because the risk was there, the possibility. And in a workplace that values consistency above all, possibility is enough. Emily continued to work hard, continued to deliver, but she noticed that the most important projects always went to someone else. She never connected it to her honesty about her health. Health conditions are protected by law, but perception isn't. The moment you tell your employer about a chronic issue, you become a risk. Fairly or not, you're no longer seen as someone who can be counted on unconditionally. Manage your health privately. Use sick days without explanation. You don't owe anyone the details. Protect yourself by keeping your vulnerabilities invisible. Emily had left her previous job under difficult circumstances. Her old boss had been toxic, micromanaging, demeaning. It had gotten so bad that Emily had quit without another job lined up. It was a risk, but she couldn't stay. She'd been careful during her interview at her current company. She'd said she was looking for a better culture, more growth. She kept it positive, and she got the job. But a year in, during a casual conversation with a coworker, the truth came out. They were talking about bad bosses, swapping stories. Emily told hers. She described her old boss in detail. The yelling, the impossible standards, the way it had affected her mental health, how she'd finally walked away. Her coworker sympathized, said Emily had done the right thing. But that coworker later mentioned it to someone else. And eventually David heard a version of the story, not the full story, just the outline. Emily had quit her last job abruptly. She'd had a conflict with her boss. She'd left without a plan, and that changed how David saw her. Was Emily the problem? Had she been difficult to manage? Was she someone who couldn't handle tough feedback? He didn't know, but the doubt was there. And when Emily later pushed back on some of David's feedback, that doubt grew. Maybe Emily doesn't take criticism well. Maybe Emily has a pattern. It wasn't fair. The situations weren't comparable. But once the seed was planted, it was hard to uproot. Your past jobs are your past. Don't bring them into your present, even when the conversation feels safe, even when people ask. The details of why you left, who you clashed with, and what went wrong don't help you. It only creates doubt. Keep your history vague. Keep your reasons positive. And never ever trash your old employer, because people will wonder if you'll trash them too. Emily was 31, and she was starting to feel it. The office was young. Most of her coworkers were in their mid-20s, fresh out of college, full of energy, unencumbered. Emily sometimes felt out of place, like she was aging out of the culture. And one day she said so. She was joking with a coworker, Megan, about how tired she was, how she couldn't bounce back from late nights the way she used to. "I'm getting old, Ma," Emily laughed. "I can't keep up with you 20-somethings anymore." Megan laughed too, said Emily wasn't old, that she was being dramatic. But the comment stuck, because a few weeks later, when the company was planning a rebrand, one that targeted Gen Z audiences, Emily wasn't brought into the brainstorming sessions, not because she wasn't qualified, but because someone somewhere had decided she might not get it, that she might be too out of touch, that the younger team members would be a better fit. Emily wasn't even aware the sessions were happening until after they were done. She felt left out, confused. She never realized that her offhand joke, her casual admission of feeling older, had quietly removed her from the conversation. Never draw attention to your age. Never make jokes about being old, out of touch, or past your prime. Even if you're joking, even if it's self-deprecating. Ageism is real, and once people start seeing you as older, as less relevant, as someone who doesn't get it, you're done. Stay current, stay confident, and never ever give them a reason to think you're anything less than sharp. Emily liked to have fun. She went to happy hours, she went to company parties, she had a few drinks, sometimes more than a few. She wasn't sloppy, she wasn't inappropriate, but she was loose, funny, the life of the party, and she told stories. One Monday morning, she was recounting a wild weekend to a few coworkers, a friend's birthday party, too much tequila, a funny, embarrassing moment. Everyone laughed. It was entertaining. But one person at that conversation was someone from HR, a woman named Rachel who happened to be getting coffee at the same time. Rachel didn't say anything, just smiled, listened, but she remembered. And a few months later, when there was an incident at a company event, a situation where someone had too much to drink and behaved unprofessionally, Rachel's mind went to Emily. Emily hadn't been involved. She hadn't even been at that event. But when the company decided to tighten their alcohol policies and have a conversation about professionalism, Rachel flagged Emily as someone to keep an eye on. Not because Emily had done anything wrong, just because she'd created an association, a perception. Emily never knew, but from that point on, she was on a quiet list. Someone who might be a risk at events, someone who might need monitoring. It was subtle, invisible, but it was there. Your party stories are not work stories. What you do in your personal life, how you blow off steam, who you are outside the office, none of it belongs at work. People will judge, people will remember, and people will use it to form opinions about your professionalism. Keep your wild side private. At work, be the version of yourself that gets promoted, not the version that gets monitored. Emily was ambitious. She wanted to grow. She wanted to lead. She had plans, and she talked about them. During a team meeting, David asked everyone to share their goals for the year. Emily said she wanted to move into a senior role, that she saw herself leading a team, that she was ready for more responsibility. David nodded, seemed supportive, but internally he had a different reaction. Emily wants my job. It wasn't true. Emily didn't want David's job. She wanted growth, development, a path forward. But that's how David heard it, and it made him defensive, because David liked his job. He wasn't going anywhere. And the idea that Emily was positioning herself to move up made him see her as a threat. From that point on, David stopped mentoring her, stopped advocating for her, stopped seeing her as someone to develop. Instead, he saw her as someone to manage, to keep in place. When opportunities came up, he didn't think of Emily. He thought of people who seemed content, people who weren't pushing. Emily noticed. She felt stuck. She couldn't understand why David had cooled on her. She never realized that her honesty about her ambitions had made her a problem to solve instead of a talent to invest in. Ambition is good, but telegraphing it to the wrong people is career suicide. Your manager is not your ally if your growth threatens their stability. Be strategic. Express interest in growth, but frame it around helping the team, supporting the company, and learning. Never make it about wanting more power. Never make it sound like you're coming for someone's role. And never ever assume that honesty about your goals will be rewarded. More often, it's punished. The moment she realized. It happened on a Tuesday. Emily was sitting at her desk, staring at her computer screen, reading an email. She hadn't gotten the promotion. Again, the role had gone to someone else, someone with less experience, less tenure, less proven success. Emily felt the familiar sting, the confusion, the frustration, but this time something else clicked. She started thinking back, reviewing the last 2 years, all the moments she'd been passed over, all the times she'd felt sidelined, all the projects that had gone to someone else. And slowly, piece by piece, she started to see it. The salary comment, the moment she'd admitted doubt, the time she'd vented about Mark, the breakup she'd shared, the family stress, the financial struggle, the chronic migraines, the party stories, every single thing she'd shared, every moment she'd been open, every time she'd been honest, they had all come back. Not in obvious ways, not in confrontations or accusations, but quietly, subtly, in the way people saw her, in the way they assessed her, in the way they decided she wasn't quite right for this role, this project, this opportunity. Emily felt a chill. She had trusted people. She had believed in authenticity. She had thought that being real would make her more human, more relatable, more valued. Instead, it had made her a target, not because people were cruel, but because people were strategic, because people remembered, because people used information, and she had given them everything they needed. Emily closed her laptop. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just sat there in the quiet hum of the office and made a decision. She would never make this mistake again. Emily didn't quit. She didn't blow up. She didn't confront anyone. She just changed. She became quieter, more careful, more strategic. She stopped sharing, stopped opening up, stopped trusting casual conversations. When people asked how she was, she smiled and said fine. When people invited her to vent, she declined politely. When people tried to connect, she stayed warm but distant. She built walls, not out of bitterness, but out of protection. And slowly, things started to shift. She was seen as more professional, more composed, more reliable. The opportunities didn't flood in immediately, but they started to come because she was no longer the person with baggage, the person with doubts, the person with complications. She was just Emily, competent, steady, focused, and that was enough. Emily learned what so many people learned too late, that the workplace is not your family. Your coworkers are not your friends. Your honesty is not rewarded. The workplace is a game, and the people who win are the people who play it smart. Emily had lost years playing it wrong, but she wouldn't lose anymore. If you're reading this, take the lesson. Protect yourself. Your struggles are real. Your vulnerabilities are valid. Your honesty is valuable. But not at work. At work, you are a brand, a product, a performance. And the moment you show cracks, someone will use them. Not because they're evil, but because they're human. And humans remember, humans judge, humans compete. So be kind, be professional, be excellent at what you do, but keep the rest to yourself, because the cost of honesty is too high, and Emily paid it in full. Share this video with your friends and colleagues. Follow us for more insightful videos like this. Cheers.